The vastness of space is filled with countless mysteries, but for Captain Sarah Rise and her crew aboard the SS Titan, one mystery stood out above all others: the sudden and mysterious fixes to their ship's failing systems. No one had ever seen the tiny creatures responsible, but the crew had no choice but to accept it. After all, it kept them alive. The SS Titan was a deep space exploration vessel, tasked with charting the farthest reaches of the galaxy. They had been traveling for months, but recently, the ship had begun to experience strange malfunctions. The engines sputtered, the life support systems flickered, and the power grid threatened to overload. But each time a problem appeared, it mysteriously fixed itself by morning. At first, Sarah thought it was just luck, or perhaps some unknown force in the deep recesses of space was lending a hand. But when the ship's main engine shut down completely, only to be back online the next day without any explanation, the crew became suspicious. Someone or something was watching over them. Late one night, Chief Engineer Mark Galloway decided to investigate. Armed with nothing but a camera and his usual skepticism, he made his way to the engine room. The air was cold, and the dim red lights from the emergency panels cast long shadows across the vast room. As Mark crept through the silent halls, a noise caught his attention, a faint scratching sound coming from one of the large engine consoles. He froze, holding his breath. What he saw next left him speechless. A small, shadowy creature, no bigger than a child's hand, was working inside the engine, its tiny hands moving with astonishing speed, tightening bolts and rewiring circuits faster than Mark could follow. The creature's large, luminous eyes glowed in the dark as it moved with purpose, its fur-covered body blending into the machine's innards. For a moment, Mark wondered if he was hallucinating. But then, the creature looked up, locking eyes with him. It didn't seem afraid. In fact, it seemed curious. Mark swallowed hard, his mind racing. "What the hell?" he muttered under his breath, not sure if he should run or approach. He reached for the communicator on his wrist, but the creature quickly scurried out of sight, disappearing back into the heart of the engine. His mind raced, torn between the need to tell Sarah and the uncertainty of what this all meant. The next morning, Mark couldn't keep it to himself. He told Sarah everything, describing the small creature and its actions in the engine room. At first, Sarah was skeptical. "A tiny alien? Are you sure it wasn't just a glitch in the system?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. But when the crew's food supply mysteriously replenished itself overnight and the engines, once again, ran flawlessly, Sarah realized something far stranger was at play. It wasn't a glitch. The creature had done something. It was clear the ship was being fixed by something or someone, much smaller than any of them could imagine. After consulting with the crew, Sarah ordered a full investigation. Over the next few nights, they set up cameras around the ship, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious fixer. On the third night, their patience paid off. The footage revealed what no one expected: not just one creature, but dozens of small beings, moving in and out of the ship's systems, repairing, adjusting, and enhancing the technology. These gremlins, this was what they were calling them, seemed to be working with a clear purpose. They weren't just fixing things, they were improving them. The crew, now convinced they weren't dealing with a freak accident, decided to reach out. They had to know more. But the question remained, why were these gremlins helping them? Days passed, and the gremlins continued their silent work, often vanishing before anyone could approach them. Finally, Captain Sarah decided to confront one of them. Armed with a translator device and a brave crew, she made her way to the heart of the ship's core, where the gremlins seemed most active. When they arrived, they found one of the gremlins working near the core's main interface. It paused as they approached, its large eyes locking with Sarah's. Slowly, it climbed down from the machinery and stood in front of her. It was small, but surprisingly intelligent-looking. "I know you can understand me," Sarah said, her voice steady but full of curiosity. "Why are you helping us?" The gremlin tilted its head, and in a voice that was soft yet clear, it spoke. "We fix because you need us. You are the future, but you must survive first." Sarah blinked, unsure of what to make of the words. "The future?" she repeated. "What do you mean?" The gremlin's eyes flickered with a strange, ancient knowledge. We are not just repairers. We are protectors. We were sent to keep you alive, to ensure your kind survives. Without us, your ship would not make it. Your species would perish in the darkness. Sarah's heart raced. But who sent you? Why us? The gremlin didn't answer right away. Instead, it looked around as though searching for the right words. We are bound to you. Long ago, a promise was made. We help, because if we don't, we will disappear. You are the ones who keep us alive. As the gremlin spoke, Sarah felt a strange sense of awe. These creatures, these gremlins, weren't just random pests. They had been sent to protect humanity, to ensure the survival of a species that, at the time, had no idea they even existed. Just as Sarah was about to ask more, the gremlin scurried back into the walls, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. She stood there for a moment, processing everything. The gremlins were more than just helpers. They were a silent, unseen force working to ensure humanity's place in the stars. And as Sarah turned to leave, she realized one important truth. Without them, the SS Titan would never have made it this far. But the question remained, how much longer would the gremlins continue to help them, and what did their mysterious connection to humanity truly mean? As Sarah watched the stars outside, she couldn't help but wonder, what else was out there waiting to be discovered? Captain Liam Carter stood on the bridge of the Orion, staring out at the endless expanse of space. His ship had just entered a new galaxy, one never explored by humans before. The crew was excited, but Liam felt a strange sense of unease. It wasn't fear, no, not exactly, but something was off. There was a feeling in the air, a tension he couldn't shake. The ship had been cruising through the stars for weeks without incident, but things were beginning to change. Small glitches in the ship's systems started appearing. The lights flickered more often. The power grid seemed unstable. The engines, once powerful and reliable, now sputtered occasionally. But the most unsettling part? The problems were always fixed by morning, with no explanation. A T first. Liam brushed it off as nothing more than routine issues that would be easily repaired. But when a critical life support system failed, and the backup failed as well, Liam couldn't ignore it anymore. The system was restored, almost immediately after, by an unknown force. He called for a meeting with his senior officers, hoping for some insight. He was joined by Commander Anna Reyes, a tough-ass-nails officer with years of experience, and Chief Engineer David Klein, the one person who knew the ship inside and out. They sat in the dimly lit conference room, their faces etched with concern. "Something's not right," Liam said, leaning forward in his chair. "We're having too many issues, and they're always fixed overnight. This isn't normal." David, ever the skeptic, shrugged. "Could be some weird malfunctioning systems. Happens on long voyages." Liam shook his head. "It's more than that. And it's not just the tech. I've been having strange dreams. Dreams about small creatures, shadowy figures that move in the walls of the ship. I don't know why, but I feel like they're trying to tell me something." Anna exchanged a look with David but didn't speak. She had her own concerns, but voicing them might make Liam think she was losing focus. She knew something was happening on the ship, but she couldn't explain it either. That night, Liam couldn't sleep. He walked the empty hallways of the Orion, trying to shake the nagging feeling that something was watching him. As he passed the engine room, he heard a soft noise like scratching, the sound of something small moving quickly. Curious, he stepped closer to the door, peering inside. What he saw almost made him jump. Tiny creatures, no larger than his fist, were crawling all over the machinery. Their eyes gleamed with an eerie glow as they worked swiftly, rewiring and repairing the equipment with surprising skill. They were like nothing he had ever seen before, small, quick, and incredibly efficient. Liam stood frozen for a moment, his heart pounding. The creatures didn't seem to notice him, too focused on their work. He could hardly believe his eyes. What were these creatures? And more importantly, why were they helping them? Without thinking, Liam stepped forward, knocking over a tool from the workbench. One of the creatures froze, turning to look at him. Its eyes locked with his, and for a brief moment, there was an unspoken understanding. Then, it scurried off into the shadows, disappearing just as quickly as it had appeared. The next day, Liam gathered his crew once again. "I saw them," he said, his voice tense. "I saw the creatures. The ones that have been fixing the ship." Anna raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure it wasn't a hallucination?" "You've been under a lot of stress, Captain." "No, Anna," Liam replied firmly. "They're real. I saw them with my own eyes. And I'm sure they've been helping us fixing our systems." David crossed his arms. "If they've been helping us, why haven't they revealed themselves? Why hide?" That was the question that lingered in Liam's mind. Why? Why were these creatures secretly fixing their ship? And what did they want in return? As the days passed, the odd occurrences continued. The creatures, whom the crew now referred to as Gremlins, appeared to be watching over them, repairing parts of the ship with astonishing speed. The crew became more and more convinced that these Gremlins weren't just random pests, they were doing something purposeful. Finally, the truth was revealed when one of the Gremlins came forward. It was a small, fragile-looking creature with glowing blue eyes and fur that shimmered in the low light. It approached Liam, and for the first time, it spoke. "We are not just helpers," the Gremlin said, its voice soft but clear. "We are bound to you, to your people." Liam was taken aback. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. The Gremlin paused, its tiny chest rising and falling as if considering how much to reveal. "Long ago, your kind made a pact with my people. A promise to protect us in exchange for our help. We repair, we fix, because it is what we owe you." Liam's mind raced. "A pact? We never made any pact. What are you talking about?" The Gremlin's eyes darkened. "You do not remember, but your ancestors did. We were created to help you, to guide you. But the price of our assistance is your survival. Without us, your technology will fail. Your ships will fall. You will not make it beyond the stars." A cold chill ran down Liam's spine. He thought back to the ancient records they had found on their journey, fragments of forgotten history. Had his ancestors really made a pact with these creatures long before they even knew space travel was possible? "What happens if we break the pact?" Liam asked. The Gremlin's eyes flickered with something resembling fear. "If the pact is broken, we will no longer help you. You will be left to your own devices and you will fail." Liam's heart raced. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. They were not just explorers. They were part of something far bigger, a web of interspecies connections that had been woven long before their time. And now, it was up to Liam and his crew to honor the pact or face the consequences. As the Gremlin disappeared into the shadows, Liam turned to his crew, a deep sense of responsibility weighing heavily on his shoulders. The stars outside looked colder than ever before. The journey was no longer just about exploration. It was about survival. The Orion was more than just a ship. It was part of a fragile balance, one that could tip at any moment. And Liam knew, deep down, that the real battle had just begun. The Titan Horizon was humanity's pride. A massive exploration ship built to venture into uncharted territories of space. It was the pinnacle of human engineering. Captain Maria Hanley stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back as she stared out into the black void beyond. The stars twinkled like distant promises, but something was off. The ship, despite its incredible technology, had been showing signs of strange malfunctions over the last few weeks. It started small. A flickering light here, a glitchy console there. Nothing too serious, but enough to make the crew nervous. Then, the main power grid began to fluctuate, and the engines would stutter at the most inconvenient times. Captain Hanley wasn't one to panic, but the frequency of these issues was starting to get to her. Something wasn't right, and she had no explanation. The real shock came one evening when, after another engine failure, the crew found the systems completely restored by morning without any human intervention. At first, the crew assumed it was just another glitch, but when it happened a second time, they knew something was going on. "I'm telling you, I've been working on these engines for years," said Chief Engineer Samara, clearly frustrated. "This isn't a regular system failure. The problems seem to fix themselves overnight, without anyone touching them." We've got some kind of ghost in the machine. Maria frowned. A ghost? That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? But Samara's skepticism wasn't enough to calm the captain. She had already scheduled an investigation. They needed answers. The crew began their search. The maintenance areas were the most likely places for any activity to occur. They inspected the ship's corridors, but everything seemed normal. No broken wires, no unexplained tools lying around. Yet the repairs kept happening, and they couldn't find the source. It wasn't until 2 days later that they finally discovered what was really happening. Late at night, Maria made her way to the engineering bay, determined to get to the bottom of this mystery. She had heard the rumors from the crew whispers of strange, small creatures spotted near the machinery. Some dismissed it as a joke, but Maria wasn't one to take chances. As she entered the dimly lit room, she heard soft, rapid, scurrying sounds. Her eyes darted around, but all she saw was the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Then, from the corner of her eye, something moved. A flash of light. She turned quickly, and her breath caught in her throat. There, crawling along the engine's massive framework, was a tiny creature. It was no bigger than a child's hand, with bright yellow eyes that shone in the dark. It moved with speed and precision, its small hands working skillfully to tighten bolts and reconnect wires. But the most peculiar thing? It wasn't human. Before Maria could take a step forward, the creature vanished, slipping into the shadows as if it had never been there. Her heart raced. Was that a hallucination? A trick of the light? She didn't think so. The creature was real, and it had been fixing the engines. The next day, Maria called the crew together. Samara, along with her fellow engineers, stood by her side as they shared their findings. "We've been seeing these things, small creatures, working on the machinery," Maria said, her voice calm but full of uncertainty. "We don't know who or what they are, but they've been keeping the ship running." Samara raised an eyebrow. "So, these creatures have been fixing everything?" "That's impossible." "I saw it with my own eyes," Maria replied firmly. "We need to figure out who they are and why they're doing this." That night, they set up cameras in strategic locations, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious fixers. It didn't take long. As the crew reviewed the footage, they saw dozens of tiny, shadowy figures crawling through the ship's mechanical guts, working in perfect harmony. They weren't just fixing things, they were enhancing the systems, making them more efficient, more powerful. But there was one thing no one could explain: why? Why were these creatures helping them? Why were they silently repairing the Titan horizon? The answer came the next day, when the crew caught one of the creatures. Samara had been monitoring the ship's maintenance areas when she finally found one of them caught in the act of rewiring a vital power conduit. The creature wasn't afraid of being seen. In fact, it seemed almost welcoming. Samara stepped forward, slowly lowering her voice. "What are you? Why are you doing this?" The creature tilted its head, its glowing yellow eyes studying her. For a moment, it did nothing, as if contemplating how much to reveal. Then, in a voice that sounded almost like a whisper in the wind, it spoke. "We fix because we must. We are the fixers. We were made to help, to keep the engines running, to keep you alive." Samara was stunned. "You were made? By who?" The creature's eyes flickered with something akin to sorrow. "Long ago, when your kind first began to travel the stars, we were created. A pact was made. We fix, because without us, your ships would never survive. Without us, you would be lost." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Samara's mind raced. She had never heard of anything like this, an ancient pact between humans and these creatures. But the truth was undeniable. The Titan horizon had been saved time and time again by their mysterious, unseen helpers. Maria stepped forward, her voice steady but urgent. "How long have you been doing this? And why are you hiding?" The fixer paused before answering. "We cannot reveal ourselves. If your kind knew of us, we would lose our power. We are bound to the shadows. But we will continue to help, as long as you honor the pact." Maria frowned, the weight of the situation sinking in. "What happens if we don't honor it?" The fixer's eyes grew dark. If the pact is broken, your ships will fail. Your kind will falter. You will not survive. A chill ran down Maria's spine. They were more than just creatures fixing machines. They were guardians of human survival, silent, hidden protectors. ASE, the creature disappeared into the shadows. Maria turned to her crew. The reality of the situation hit her hard. They weren't just explorers. They were part of a fragile agreement, a delicate balance between humanity and the unseen fixers who ensured they could reach the stars. And now, it was up to them to uphold the pact or face the consequences. The SS Arcturus was one of humanity's finest ships, capable of crossing vast stretches of space. For years, it had traveled deep into uncharted space, exploring alien worlds, discovering new civilizations, and bringing back knowledge that had advanced humanity. But now, something was wrong. The ship, once flawless, was starting to show signs of stress, and no one could explain why. Captain Elena Torres stood on the bridge, staring out into the star-filled void. The Arcturus had been on its current mission for over a year, mapping a distant star system. But lately, things had begun to go wrong. The power systems flickered, the engines sputtered, and the life support systems had shut down twice without warning. At first, Elena thought it was just the strain of long-distance travel. But the glitches were growing more frequent, and every time the crew managed to fix one problem, another would crop up almost immediately. It was like the ship was falling apart, and yet no one could figure out why. "We've checked every system, Captain," said Chief Engineer Lucas Grimm, his face tired and lined with stress. "Nothing's malfunctioning in the usual way. It's like something's interfering." Elena narrowed her eyes. She didn't like the sound of that. Interfering? What do you mean? Lucas hesitated. "I don't know how to explain it. It's like the problems are happening on their own. Like something is inside the ship, controlling things from the shadows." Elena didn't say anything for a moment, but a cold shiver ran down her spine. Could it be sabotage? An enemy infiltrator? Or was it something else? She needed answers. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. The Arcturus was silent, too silent. She decided to take a walk through the lower decks, where the main systems were housed. The air was thick with the hum of machinery, the soft whir of engines and processors that usually brought comfort, now a constant reminder that something was wrong. A sea passed through the hallways. A strange noise caught her attention, a low, rhythmic tapping. It sounded like something moving in the walls. Elena froze. Her eyes scanned the dim corridor, but she saw nothing. Then, without warning, the lights flickered, and she heard a soft rustling sound from behind the control panels. Something was moving inside the ship, something that shouldn't be there. Elena's heart raced. She approached cautiously, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Peering through the access panel, she saw something that made her blood run cold. There, just beyond the machinery, was a small creature. It was no bigger than a hand, with dark, leathery skin and large eyes that glowed faintly in the darkness. The creature was working quickly, pulling wires and reprogramming the ship's systems, as if it knew exactly what it was doing. Elena's first instinct was to back away, but something stopped her. The creature didn't seem hostile. It didn't even seem aware of her presence. It was simply working. She stepped back, her mind racing. What was that thing? Where had it come from? And why was it fixing the ship? The next day, Elena called a meeting with her senior officers. Lucas was already there, along with Commander Ray Allen, the ship's security chief. Elena didn't waste time. "I saw something last night," she said, her voice steady. "There's something on this ship. Something fixing our systems. It's small, it's fast, and it's definitely not human." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, not human?" "I mean, it was a creature," Elena replied. "It was working on the power grid, reprogramming the systems." Ray frowned. "Are you sure it wasn't a glitch in the system? Maybe the malfunction caused some kind of hallucination?" "No," Elena said firmly. "I saw it. I know what I saw." The crew stared at her, unsure of how to react. They had been dealing with mysterious malfunctions for weeks, and now the captain was claiming they had a creature on board, fixing the ship in secret. We need to find out what it is, Elena continued. I want to know where it came from, what it's doing, and why it's fixing the ship. They decided to set up cameras and monitoring equipment all over the ship, especially near the areas where the malfunctions had occurred. It wasn't long before they caught something on tape. That night, the creature was back. This time, it wasn't just one. Dozens of small creatures moved through the ship's walls, their glowing eyes shining as they scurried over the equipment, working with lightning speed. They fixed wires, adjusted settings, and even replaced damaged components. It was as if they were repairing the ship from the inside, unnoticed and unchallenged. But the most chilling part? They were doing it with purpose, like they knew exactly how the ship worked. The footage was unsettling, but it raised even more questions. Why were these creatures helping them? Were they allies or enemies? And who, if anyone, was controlling them? Elena didn't wait for answers. She ordered a full investigation, sending Ray and a team of security officers to search the ship. They needed to find where the creatures were coming from and who or what was behind them. Hours passed, and then Ray finally made a discovery. In the deepest section of the Arcturus, hidden behind a maintenance hatch, they found a room full of strange symbols etched into the walls. It was clear that this room wasn't part of the original ship design. Someone or something had added it after the ship was built. The symbols were unlike anything they had ever seen, a mix of alien script and ancient technology. It was clear now, the creatures were not random. They were part of something much older, something more powerful. Elena stared at the symbols, her mind racing. The ship was no longer just a marvel of human engineering. It was part of something bigger, something connected to the shadows in the machine. And as the crew stared at the cryptic markings, one thing was certain: they were no longer alone in the stars. The Arcturus had a secret, and it was up to them to uncover it before it was too late. But there was a deeper question now, one that lingered in Elena's mind. Were the creatures fixing the ship, or were they preparing it for something else? Captain Jonah Miller stood at the observation deck of the Vanguard, staring out into the blackness of space. His crew was exhausted. They had been traveling through deep space for over 6 months, mapping unknown systems and discovering new planets. But lately, something had changed. The ship was acting strange. .it started small nothing that could have raised alarms. The lights flickered more than usual. The food storage system had gone offline for a brief moment, and then restored itself. The engines would occasionally sputter, but nothing to worry about. Yet, the glitches kept increasing, and the crew had begun to notice something disturbing. The ship was being fixed, but not by any human hands. Jonah had heard the rumors. Whispers of tiny figures seen crawling through maintenance areas, fixing broken machinery at night. He had brushed them off as stress and fatigue playing tricks on the crew's minds. But deep down, he knew something was off. The problems the Vanguard faced weren't ordinary malfunctions. They felt like someone or something was interfering. One evening, while walking through the darkened halls, Jonah heard the unmistakable sound of quick, scurrying footsteps. His hand instinctively moved to the sidearm holstered at his waist. It wasn't an animal, he knew that much. It was something smaller, faster, and it was moving quickly, darting in and out of the walls and corridors. Jonah's curiosity overpowered his caution. As he approached the ship's central engine room, he spotted something in the shadows. There, in the dim light, a small figure was crouched on the control panel, its hands working rapidly to fix the power regulator. The creature was no taller than a foot, with ragged fur, sharp ears, and large glowing eyes that darted around nervously. Jonah froze. His breath caught in his throat. It was one of them. The mysterious creatures that had been repairing the ship. The moment the creature saw Jonah, it froze. Its glowing eyes locked onto his. For a brief moment, the two stared at each other. Then, without a sound, the creature darted into a narrow vent, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Jonah stood there, unsure of what to think. It had been fixing the ship. But why? The next day, Jonah gathered his senior officers in the command center, his face serious. "We've got a problem," he said, his voice steady. "There's something or someone on this ship that's been fixing our systems. It's not human." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Commander Emily Carter, a seasoned officer with a sharp mind, was the first to speak. Are you sure? Maybe the tech is just malfunctioning on its own. Jonah shook his head. No. I saw one of them last night. They're not malfunctioning. They're fixing things, and I don't think it's a coincidence. Emily's eyes narrowed. What are they, Captain? And why are they fixing the ship? Jonah hesitated. I don't know. But I intend to find out. For the next few days, the crew set up cameras and motion sensors in the ship's critical areas. They needed answers, and they needed them fast. Every time they checked the footage, they saw the same thing: tiny, shadowy creatures working at the ship's systems. They weren't just fixing broken parts. They were enhancing the technology, making it more efficient, more powerful. The crew had never seen anything like it. One evening, as Jonah and Emily were reviewing the latest footage, something strange happened. The creatures, which had previously been working in the shadows, suddenly stopped. They gathered in a small maintenance bay, all of them sitting still for the first time. And then they began to do something they hadn't done before. They started communicating. It was not with words, but with a strange series of clicks, beeps, and patterns that seemed to emanate from their bodies. It was like they were talking to each other, sharing information in a way that felt calculated. Jonah could feel a growing sense of unease. These creatures were more than just random pests. They were organized. They had a purpose. What are they doing? Emily whispered, watching the footage with wide eyes. Jonah's mind raced. They're not just fixing the ship. They're working together. But what are they doing? And why are they hiding? The next day, they decided to confront the creatures. They set up a trap, one that would allow them to capture one of the mysterious beings without harming it. The plan was simple: lure it into a maintenance bay, using a signal to attract its attention. Once it entered the area, they would secure it and get answers. That night, Jonah stood in the observation deck, watching the cameras carefully. Emily was stationed at the nearby control room, waiting for the signal to go off. The atmosphere was tense, thick with anticipation. Minutes passed, and nothing happened. Just as Jonah was about to give up, the signal blipped once, then twice. The trap had worked. Jonah rushed to the maintenance bay, where the creature had been trapped. There it was, standing in the center of the room, its glowing eyes fixated on him. The creature didn't move, almost as if it were waiting. Jonah took a cautious step forward, his voice steady. What do you want from us? The creature didn't answer in words. Instead, it moved quickly, pressing its tiny hands to a nearby terminal. The screen flickered, and a series of cryptic symbols flashed across it, symbols Jonah didn't recognize. For a moment, he thought the creature was trying to show him something. And then it happened. A sequence of numbers appeared on the screen, followed by a single word code. Jonah's heart skipped a beat. The creatures had been leaving a code for them, a key to something far more important than simple repairs. What is this? Emily's voice cracked as she stepped into the room, staring at the strange message. Jonah didn't know. But one thing was clear: the Gremlin code wasn't just about fixing the ship. It was a message. A warning. Or perhaps a key to something even greater. The creature disappeared into the shadows once again. Leaving only the blinking code behind, Jonah realized something terrifying. The Vanguard wasn't just being repaired. It was being prepared for something unknown, something that would change everything. And the Gremlins had their own agenda. The hunt for answers had just begun.